Hello, everybody, and welcome to our after church tea time. Today, we're going to be sharing our insights and takeaways from Shaleia's sermon on surrendering struggle and embracing miracles. And I'm joined by Diana and Nadia for today's after church tea time. Welcome to you two, and welcome to everybody else, and thank you for joining us. So I think one of the things that stood out for me was Shaleia's sense that, we tend to have this hypervigilance that we probably don't necessarily realize that's actually there. And it kind of filters into a lot of things. And, I recall from various coaching sessions, sometimes we actually just make certain things a companion. And so when we heal through it, it kind of feels almost like losing something. And we need to kind of gain the perspective of there was no real loss because there was no real issue in the first place. So I had a session a couple of weeks ago, and it was so funny because we healed through something, and then I was like, I don't quite remember what I healed through. I just know that it's gone. And I don't know if either of you have ever experienced that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember it happened in an episode in TFAS too, where someone was healing through something and they just ended up forgetting what they were even upset about. And that happens quite often, where you have such a charged energy with something, and then all of a sudden you go through that loving, healing presence, and then all of a sudden you don't even remember what you were so attached to of this misalignment. So it's beautiful because you know that like you're getting into that next level and that next level. And you don't even need to like look down to where you were before because it's just so juicy going up and up and up. So yeah, the ascension process is very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because just yesterday I had a session with my coaches and we were healing through a really deep core block for me. And I remember feeling really peaceful. And my coaches asked me, they're like, "Oh, how are you feeling now?" I'm like, I don't really remember the upset. And they're like, "Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Is it okay to trust your healing?" I'm like, "Yeah." And obviously, like they remember the upset. So as we kind of move through the session, they're like, "So how do you feel about X, Y, and Z?" I'm like, "Oh, that's just so silly." And they're like, "See?" So I'm like, "Oh, I really did heal it." And I don't have to like hold on to it to try to remember or like try to make myself remember my core choices because like as they reminded me, all you have to do is make the core choice, let it go, and you've healed. And it's okay for you to trust that. You don't have to like try to remember it and reaffirm it because you've made it at the core. Um, so yeah, kind of like what Shaleia was sharing, it's the healing process can be easy if we allow it to be easy. We don't have to like fight and struggle and resist it. We can just surrender to the natural flow.
Yeah, it's really nice when things become like misbeliefs become like nonsense and silly because it's like now it's gone. Now it's like, what was I thinking before? And you have this whole new life unfolded in front of you. And none of you guys asked what we're drinking. I like went and made some coffee. I was like, oh, we have to describe our drink.
Yeah.
And you guys forgot. And I was like, oh, didn't even
Okay,
need
so what did you do? You made coffee.
Right. Tell us.
coffee, yes.
I made coffee as well.
You did.
Oh, very nice. The coffee gang.
Right.
Yeah, I did as well. It's just like, just literally a couple of minutes before we went live, and I was like, actually, I do feel like coffee. And it wasn't even related to tea time. I just actually felt like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, something else that kind of that you spoke to, Diona, around just going with the flow, I think is also quite important. And it's probably something that probably allows us to let go of thinking that things have to be a struggle. And when we say going with the flow, it's not this forced ease. It's literally the lack of control, of trying to control the situation. Because I think a lot of the time it's just that we actually try to control it. We probably intrinsically know that we can't, but we still have the sense that we need to try to control it. And I think it's something that Shaleia also spoke to, in terms of, just having this picture of how things should be and how things must work and what must happen and the sequence of those steps and all those things. And I've always found that the sequence isn't always the sequence. The sequence sometimes skips ahead a couple of steps only to come back one step, and skips ahead a couple of steps only to come back one step. And it's kind of, like it's very funny, because if anybody knows anything about sewing, you kind of know you can't skip ahead stitches, but yet we still do it sometimes. And it's quite funny, because if you put that in relation, you'll just not realize what gaps you're creating in trying to mend something from a sewing perspective. So just the simplicity of an example like that just kind of brings it back to logic, that there's a flow to things, and it's actually quite natural to thread in a certain way. And I feel like if we probably equated that to what we were doing, it would actually feel a lot simpler. Because I feel like, especially for me, I feel like sometimes I've tended to overcomplicate things or overthink things, and half of the time the overthinking has never panned out. The crazy conversation, like, okay, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and that's going to happen, doesn't pan out. And I've spent hours imagining these conversations. And like when I stop doing it and I just allow for a conversation to flow, it naturally goes where it needs to go. And that has helped me kind of just take the step back and go, like, what actually feels natural in these situations? Because the unnatural makes it feel like struggle. It makes it feel heavy. It makes it feel tedious. Whereas if there's a naturalness to this process, it might feel like work, but it doesn't feel like heavy lifting.
Yeah, that was such a good point. Go ahead.
No, you go.
That reminds me of the meditation Jeff and Shaleia has. And that one part where Shaleia says, you don't have to focus, you don't have to like force yourself to focus, just rather allow that focus to just come, and it just comes. And I was working on that yesterday. I was like, God, I want to be one with you. I want oneness with you. Like, how can I be one with you? And God's like, you already are, like, it's here right now. Just me walking, just me doing my daily task. Like, it's already oneness. And then we have that moment where we're thinking, like, God, we want to be one. I want to be one with you. We were one this entire time. And just that thought wasn't necessary, because it's always unfolding as oneness. And keeping yourself in that flow of work, rest, self-care, love is all that oneness. It may be different tasks, different days, but it's still that oneness. So it was like unfolding for me yesterday. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I don't have to force it. I don't have to like focus so intently on it. It's already there, just like right now. And what I like to do is really personify God, like as a person. When I really need him, like he's right there, he's right next to me. Or Mother God is right there, right next to me, that energy, you know, and bringing that personification is even more stronger. Like if I'm walking through the park at night and stuff, like God's here. I got two angels in front of me, two angels in the behind me. Like what's gonna happen, you know? So just keeping that vision and that personification really helps me.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it. Like, I think I do that too, kind of, especially when I'm healing like a father wound or a mother wound, like seeing God as divine dad or divine mother sitting with me, parenting me. And I kind of like the idea also of like going out and like visualizing that you have your angels around you, right? And that you are protected. It's really nice. Um, One thing you said, Granville, that really made me think about something I've been moving through was about like you were elaborating on like natural flow and things like that. And as Shaleia was sharing her piece in the sermon, I was thinking about specific examples in my life where I've been kind of holding on or trying to control and struggling. And it's definitely been like with my weight loss journey. And man, that's been such a struggle because, and I was just kind of moving through this with my coaches the other day, where because it's like in society will tell you so much about how if you're a certain weight and a certain age, then you can only attract a certain type of man, right? And once you hit a certain age, you're in the danger zone for getting married. And so like all of these things, we're fed with all of these limiting beliefs and standards. And I realized that I was kind of starting to buy into that. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta lose this weight. I gotta like, how am I gonna attract my twin flame? How is my twin flame gonna be attracted to me if I'm overweight? And like all these ridiculous things because I was buying into that narrative. And what I realized is that because I was thinking, if everyone else is doing it, there's got to be some truth to it. That's what I was in the illusion of it. I'm like, everybody thinks this way. I feel like the only person who is choosing not to think this way. But that's the path, right? Like that's the path of unionists. Like maybe we are a small group of people that are like trailblazing this path, but that's okay. And maybe majority of the world thinks a certain way, but as my coaches reminded me, it's about following your heart and what you know to be true in your heart, and what God is telling you. And yes, it can look completely different from what the world is saying, but that's okay. And I don't have to like follow the same path that everyone else is following, because as I was kind of moving through it, it was so hard to surrender that control and like let it go, because I was thinking that I was going to miss out on my person, miss out on my chance for marriage and a family if I don't hurry up and do what the world tells me I need to do. And my coach just like gently reminded me, like, that's ridiculous. That's not how it works. You attract your twin flame, you attract your good by loving yourself. You love yourself into it, right? You do the inner work. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. And it's a lot easier that way. And yeah, it's completely different. It's like a completely different way of being and thinking. And that's what we signed up for, on this path. And it feels good and it feels right. And so it's just kind of remembering that and surrendering that control.
I love that you shared that, because I think something that's really resonated with me today in the group coaching with Jeff as well was, the sense that, well, we know it. We know that you look for a solution to a problem, right? But we also know that sometimes you're not being presented with a solution because there is actually no problem. And sometimes when the solution does present itself, it's because it was a problem that we weren't looking at in the first place. So again, it's about being open. It's about trusting that you're going to get what you need when you need it, which is something that Shaleia also shared in terms of how much are we actually trusting God in this journey and in this process and in every situation. And it's what both of you are speaking to in terms of trusting that God is right there when you're walking through the park, and trusting that God is right there when you're cooking your meal, and trusting that God is right here while we're talking to each other, and probably talking to ourselves through ourselves is God's message. And all of those little things where we sometimes forget to connect the dots. And it's some of the simplest thing we ever learned. It was the first thing we really ever properly learned, was to connect the dots in those drawings to create the picture. It's such, you think it's such a rudimentary skill for a child to learn, but it literally opens up our entire thinking process, because it shows us how things start to connect to form the picture. And we tend to forget that those simple lessons are actually quite profound lessons, because you're not going to connect dots that aren't there. You're not going to go and draw additional dots when you're forming this picture. But as adults, when we think about things, we put in extra dots. We change the picture. We change the plan. We create a whole nother branch of this plan because we put so many other dots in the place. And I think, it's just like when and I like to speak in analogies because it just makes it so simple. It's like, well, actually, that's the thing. The thing is the thing. And I think that's part of learning through unionism and through Jeff and Shaleia's teachings, is that I can be direct about something, but I don't have to be hard about it. I don't have to be offensive about it. I don't have to be forceful about it. I can be quite direct and get the message across and literally lose nobody in the process. Lose no part of the audience in the process. And I think, that's the thing of the thing about learning, the thing about starting to trust your own ability. Like, we have gotten so many components of skills, and we just kind of sometimes need to put them in different places, but the dots connect. And I think that's what we need to probably bring ourselves back to in remembering, is that the dots actually connect, and it's not a struggle to connect the dots.
Oh, I love that a lot. Thank you for bringing that up, Deanna, and thank you for connecting the dots, Granville. That was beautiful. And it just reminded me of, like, when we're struggling for something, like, to really look at what the energy is behind it. And, like, when we're working on attraction, like Jeff has mentioned to us in the open forum, like, what is the energy behind wanting to lose weight? Is it control? Is it health? Is it for our benefit? I know I struggle with that a lot. And it goes down to, like, me wanting health for myself rather than having to think about anything else. And it also brings up a point yesterday when I was, like, outside just looking at the trees and everything. I was telling God, like, God, I'm so in love. I'm so in love with this consciousness that I've, like, awakened to. And I'm allowing that consciousness to seep in through everything, including my challenges. Like, if I'm thinking, like, I'm not enough, I allow that in love feeling of falling in love with myself, that it just dissipates, So that's what I'm feeling called to
Yeah, and it kind of makes me kind of think about like going in deeper into my own personal journey around the weight loss. Like I was wanting to rush it and like rush the process and like to be specific, lose like a bunch of weight in a short amount of time. And as I was kind of mirroring that, it was like I want to be my divine self, right? Because you mentioned like what's your reason why? And I want to be my divine self. I want fitness and health, right? And as I was mirroring it and as my coaches were guiding me through it, um, I came into that place where I could feel like the divinity, right? Like that consciousness you were speaking to. And I got scared. Like my inner child got scared in that moment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels like a lot. It was just so interesting. And what I realized is that I wanted to kind of ease into it because it's such a divine like energy, and it's like we are divine and we are love, and that's our natural state of being. And at the same time, we have bits of our consciousness that we're still bringing into that divinity. And for me, I realized that I want to take it step by step, like Granville was saying, like connect the dot by dot by dot. And I thought that I wanted to just paint all over the dots and just rush and have it all at once. But what's most compassionate for me is to kind of ease into that divinity and ease into my relationship with God, recognizing that I'm still a baby in this work and I don't have to rush it. And so then my coaches helped me connect the dots to see it's the same with your weight loss, right? You don't have to rush and lose all of this weight to have your divinity. You have it right now. And it's okay for you to ease into realizing it in the physical, right? So yeah, that what you shared, Nadia, kind of reminded me of that piece that I worked through as well.
Yeah,
That's
and
actually really cool because like when you're speaking, I was just like, actually, that like that's resonating a lot, and it's also because I've kind of been looking at this weight thing and going, I actually don't like the extra weight that I'm carrying right now, kind of thing. But again, it's that like how you've worked through it and spoken through it feels like the application of a lot of compassion, which is probably something that we've never been taught to apply our compassion to ourselves in that way. And it's like, and it's only on this path of unionism and learning through Jeff and Shaleia's work that we've realized that our compassion is actually not complete if it doesn't include us. If we don't include ourselves in compassion, it's not complete. And it's something that, that is my line. Like, no matter what happens, if your compassion doesn't include you, it's not complete. And so I think that probably can spill over into quite a few things, because again, if it was your friend, you would probably advise them differently and speak to them differently. But when you're in your head speaking to yourself about this thing, you're probably the harder voice than any other voice from the outside. And I think that that's really just, again, a lesson, a reminder for us all to go, well, actually, that's part of why you're feeding into the feeling of struggle. Soften the approach a little bit. It's kind of like take a long, hard look and have a chat to that person in the mirror and go, self, what are you doing?
And also, like, when you brought up that you were getting scared of your divinity and what was coming up, I get that. Like, when I feel like, oh no, harmonious twin flame union is gonna come and I'm so scared, like what's gonna happen? And I realized like God has it all planned out for you. God knows you the best compared to like anyone else and yourself. So no matter how you think it's like coming at you like full, like head on, God wouldn't do that, you know. God wouldn't allow that, knowing that that's my child, and my child does not like it like that. My child likes it in a flow with the ease and all that. So although you may think that you're rushing and it's gonna like happen in a very fast way, you'll probably hit a block. You'll probably hit your head on the wall and be like, oh, wait, you know, that's already part of the plan. God's probably like, oh, Diana is going to rush it for a little bit. Then Diana's going to recognize that, oh, snap, like I need to ease it. But really, that was the plan all along,
Right.
for
Yeah.
you to recognize that how you like it, for you to recognize how you are and how God already knows you and already knows how your path is going to be. So there's nothing that's really ever going to come head on or ever going to scare you. Rather, these like little bumps and experiences that you're having is what's allowing you to ease into it. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's like recognizing that it's what we want is already here for us, right? And it's just easing into it. And like you were saying, it's gonna happen naturally for us. And these bumps on the road, they're just helping us get clear and like get to know ourselves and what we like and what we don't like. And oh, I thought I wanted it quick, fast, and in a hurry, but it actually feels more compassionate for me to take my time right now. And that might change. But yeah, just kind of like it's an opportunity, like you said, to get clear. And it was God's plan all along. Yeah.
yeah, and that brought me back to a TFAS I was watching of you could dive right into Christ consciousness and you could dive right into harmonious twin flame union if you wanted to. But some people are ready for that and some people aren't. It really depends. And what you brought up, Granville, about compassion is also something Jeff and Shaleia speak about. Like, you can't even come to this point in TFU without compassion, without a deep sense of compassion to recognize your twin and to be in this path. So, yeah, it's like an unfolding of compassion and adding on more and more compassion. And that's what Soraya was talking about of loving ourselves, is having that deep compassion for ourselves and for this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that you mentioned that, because that's something that really did stand out for me in the sermon as well, was this, Soraya sharing that it's actually safe to have a life of love. And like just just when she said that, like it was almost like I had to double take, because I was like, did I actually think so in the first place? Did I really actually feel that it's safe to have a love life?
Right?
And it was so, like it was really odd for those words to just kind of go, whoa, pay attention, there's something there. Because it literally, if there was anything in the sermon that really stood out, that's probably the thing. And I was like, there's a piece that needs to be explored.
How were we living before without love? I'm
Right.
just like, it boggled my mind. Like, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting. And it gave me reason to sit back and go, what is this? And it's something that you spoke to, Diana, it's limiting beliefs. And what is this limit? What is the limiting belief around safety, and the safety to have a love life, and the safety to actually be in love with life? And, like that for me, I feel is probably the biggest resonance of a question that I've had in a long, long time. So I know that there's something to explore here and unpack, because it might just be the very next thing to heal. And it's so nice that she spoke to that, the sense of falling into your breakthrough as opposed to chasing it. Like, just makes so much more sense, because again, we need to always remind ourselves that our journey is not the same as everybody else's. There's resonant points, but our journeys are not the same. And even if they look similar, we're probably healing different sides on each side of the coin at any given time. So it's okay to give yourself space. And it's something that Jeff spoke to again again, that's something that came up in the class today. It was just like that sense of giving yourself space. And something that stood out for me was like, have I really actually had space? Has somebody ever really given me space? Have people always been on my ass about something? And it's all of those things, and you kind of go, goodness, no wonder sometimes it feels glitchy, because that's an unfamiliar feeling. And I think that's really where we start to uncover the upsets, is where something that should be good feels uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely come across that in my healing. Just like, I feel like I say that every coaching session. I'm like, this feels unfamiliar. Like, this feels different. Because my coaches will be like, well, how does it feel? It feels really different. And I have to keep reminding myself that that's okay, right? Because we are taught so much growing up, so many illusions that like we're taught to kind of feed into, and all of these limiting beliefs. And so when we recognize the truth and we start on this path, this journey, you realize it's completely different from what I was taught to believe and how I was taught to live. It's radical, right? It's transcendental, as my coaches say, and as Jeff and Shaleia say, it's transcendental. And I've been kind of trying to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, getting comfortable with the fact that this is totally different. It's just a few of us who are on this path. It may look a little lonely at times, but that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it is totally different. When I look at my family and how they live their life, and they struggle, and I could say I go through challenges as well, but with my challenges, I have this deep baseline of peace and being in love. And I can't even describe it to others. Like, no matter what, I have this feeling, this consciousness of my twin flame, of just being in such deep love. And yeah, I wish others could feel it as much as we do, of like knowing that there's a companion with us in God and with our twin flame. And this brings up another point for me of like being so delusional. I mean, we say delusional, but it's really being so much in our heart, that we live in our heart. It's not delusional, it's that heart life that we're trying to project onto our reality, of having that true divine body, having that true divine life, that true divine characteristics that we wish for. Be that delusional and know that your twin flame is here, know that God's here, and just know that you're living in your best and like your dream place. And yeah, it's not really delusional. It's actually living within your heart and following your heart. So
Yeah, because I was actually going to challenge you on the word delusional and ask
oh,
you,
you
if
would grab.
you look at this word delusional, isn't it actually just that you're living in your spiritual truth, and we haven't been taught to live in our spiritual truth?
A
And so
lot of
we're learning to live in our spiritual truth.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I would recommend it to anyone. Doesn't matter the challenges. Like Surya was saying, like all of the challenges, we still have the mirror exercise, whether big or small. It just depends on the energy that we're holding on to it. But each challenge can be overcome. And we get more expansion of peace, but we also have that deep love that is just growing and growing. I would not give this up for the world. So.
Awesome. I feel like that's a great note to end our tea time on. How do you feel, Diana?
I'm feeling complete.
Yep. Cool. Any last thoughts from you, Nadia?
No, I was just checking, like, oh, it's time already. Like, that's
It is my fast, yeah.
Awesome. So thank you to both of you for joining me for After Church Tea Time, and to the people that have followed us. And to anybody else, please do feel free to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. You will find all our other live content on our YouTube channel, and please feel free to like and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing all of you again soon for another After Church Tea Time. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.